Hello, good afternoon to all, and thank you for coming to this event. My name is Varun Shrivastava, and I welcome you all to this session on experiential learning. This event is broadly divided into two parts. First, we have the chat between Rajeev Baphna and Satyamoy Chatterjee, the two industry veterans on their experiences spanning multiple decades through various times, through internet boom, through the internet bubble burst, the Great Recession, and the time after that, so that we can learn what we can expect after these challenging times. Followed by a session on the application of common sense by Madhav Kaushik in natural language processing. I would request you all participants to keep yourselves on mute during the session. If you have a question, please do type that in the window on your channel. We have time reserved uh, towards the end of it, where we can answer as many questions as we can. So without taking much time, I'm going to introduce Satyamoy Chatterjee, the one half of this Fireside chat. Satyamoy is a seasoned analytics professional with more than 18 years of global multidimensional experience in the application of analytics and data science across industry veterans. Currently, he is the Executive Vice President of Client Solutions and Product Strategy for Analyttica Data Lab. In 2019, he was among the top 10 data scientists in India by Analytics India magazine. Welcome, Satyamoy. Joining him on this fireside chat is the founder and CEO of Analyttica Data Lab, Rajeev Baphna. Rajiv has more than 3 decades of experience in the field of analytics. He has enabled not only companies but entire industries to adopt analytics across globe. I will leave the detailed introduction of Rajiv or Satyamoy in the segment to follow, as I believe that will do more justice to Rajiv's introduction and journey in the space. Thank you, Rajiv and Satyamoy, for joining us. To avoid any interruptions in the chat, we are going to play a live recording of the session. However, Rajiv and Satyamoy are present with us and they will be available live for a Q&A session after this session. So let's get the ball rolling.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Satyamoy Chatterjee. I welcome all the participants who took the time to join from different locations today. I was told that we have multiple registrations coming in from different time zones as well. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you based on where you are located now. First of all, let me express my gratitude for the entire team in enabling this event in a short notice, especially when everybody is already remote. Thank you to our partner Crowd Product for facilitating the show as well. This is 100% online and being streamed through different avenues live. It's my pleasure today to welcome Rajeev Baphna in this discussion. Rajeev doesn't really need an introduction if you follow the analytics and AI space. He has been one of the pioneers of the applied analytics field when it comes to business integration. In a career spanning across 3 decades and multiple geographies across the globe, Rajiv had the opportunity to play diverse roles with a particular focus on creating business impact. Having also been the CFO of a 10 billion asset portfolio of one of the top 10 global banks. He is known for creating and leading structures around centers of excellence and enterprise products and solutions. He has also been globally recognized on multiple occasions as one of the influential leaders in the field of analytics and AI. Many of you know Analyttica has been here for a little more than 7 years now. Rajiv started it in 2012 with a powerful vision of making analytics and AI mainstream when it comes to creating business impact through objective decision making. Analyttica is an analytics and AI platform solutions company with an innovative culture. We have clients across the globe, across industry verticals, and our primary focus is to create business impact by leveraging our patented innovative product solutions. Recently, we opened up the relevant parts of our B2B offerings to take it out there for everybody to come and experience for learning, application, and owning their solution skills. So later part of this event today, we will walk you through ATH Leaps, where Madhav Kaushik, VP Client Solutions Analytica, through a workshop will give you a hands-on experience of this innovation. So the objective of the next 30 minutes is to hear from Rajiv to understand his perspectives, have him dwell into incidences from his career and life to get a few takeaways which can potentially help all of us here to reflect on and possibly help steer our careers in the right direction. So let's get started. Rajiv, welcome again. And needless to say, Rajiv, we are witnessing unprecedented times. Many schools of thoughts have started to firmly believe that we are at an inflection point that will mark the advent of a new normal. Given the times we are in, what is in store ahead, wanted to start with getting your perspective, particularly so if you can relate circumstances in the past that may come close to what we are witnessing now, and throw some light and relate it to your experiences. That will be a great start to start with.
Okay, thank you, Satyamoy. I think it's a great question. Glad to be here. Thank you all for enabling this and participating as well. I'd like to share a few things, a few perspectives, right? From I started work sometime in mid 1990 or around 1990 or so, and it's been a solid 30 years of learning that I think I can share some perspectives on the current situation. And the journey has been fraught with ups and downs in terms of market. Satyama, you asked me about the economic situation. I think I can I would like to put it into a very simple way of things that we control and things we can perhaps influence but not control, right? So when you look at that, I'll give you some instances from my perspective in the journey that hopefully will shed some light on the relevance to today's economic situation. So the 1990s, according to me, and I spent a major part of that career abroad in the United States, where the industry was kind of at an inflection point, coming from the 80s into a growth mode, since specifically capabilities around the internet in the mid 90s were coming up very, very quickly. See, the online world was just taking into effect, displacing not really displacing, but taking over from the old world of mail in terms of marketing, outbound telemarketing, inbound telemarketing, etc., etc. And the channels were being added on, right? So when you look at that, it contributed to sort of a good amount of technology revolution, aided by obviously good amount of hardware integration and spreading of computers globally at the consumer level, right? And then Intel came on with its 386 into 486 and 586 and Pentium chips, and the story is known, right? So computation increased, storage became easier to access, and obviously internet came into being. So when you look at that industry growth, and I entered the industry initially as an engineer in a manufacturing space, but subsequently around the early 90s, I entered the financial services industry. And when I entered the company, the bank I worked for was a global bank, right? And it was spread across multiple countries at that point, coming off of a huge run in the consumer business that was under tremendous pressure because of the onset of new players that may not necessarily have been banks, but could have been monolines or could have been niche players. So I entered the card business, and interestingly, the bank, which was about 20% of the industry, and the industry was growing at 20%, the bank was losing 20% share year over year. It was an interesting problem. In hindsight, when I look at the learnings, it created a situation where the economic situation was good, but the business situation wasn't that good for certain players. And specifically, the learning there was that a lot of the players looked at the market, at the consumer, from the eyes of the product they had versus looking at themselves from the eyes of the customer, right? So we understood that, and we tried to turn that around. And the way to do it at scale was to be able to get a good application and understanding of what the customers were doing. And to do that at scale, we needed to put in tremendous abilities to look at data of the customers, of our customers, and customers that were not on us, that were doing things outside, and how that sort of lens turned around and looked at us with that behavior. And therein came sort of fundamental revolution, at least in the financial services and consumer side, of financial re-engineering. We called it at that point. Subsequently led to a variety of different roles and names. But the ability to be able to look at customer, their behavior, and then financially re-engineer ourselves and products and the industry as well. Subsequently, the bank I was in and the business I was in saw tenfold growth, driven both by organic and inorganic over a period of 7 years, bringing it close to a Fortune 35 company on its own, right? Now, you fast forward a little bit in the late 90s, you look at the situation in which the world evolved, right? And actually 1999 was interesting. Many of you may not know, but there was something called Y2K, year 2000. The year 2000 was approaching so fast, right? And most of our old system on which utilities were run, etc., were all two-digit systems. So if the date turned to 01, it could have backtracked to 1901 instead of 2000, advent of 2000, and it could have displaced the market significantly because systems could have shut down. So that was a huge thing in 1999. World came to a virtual stop the midnight of 1999, December 31st, right? It was interesting, but all eyes were focused. Again, things we could control, right? And things we could avoid, right? Subsequently, in 2001, as things evolved and the dot-com sort of era came to an end, you would have heard of dot-com bust, right? Economies had to be revived again, right? And therein came the period of low credit growth, right? Low credit availability, lower interest rate availability via credit, especially in the United States where the Greenspan effect, right? And a huge chunk of monies were moved in the market and given out to drive growth, right? Again, economic situation which we could sort of control in the short term. Long-term effects were going to be only visible 8 or 10 years later. And I'll talk that out a little more, right? But 2001, there was an unnatural event that occurred, and it was man-driven. It was 9/11, and it kind of put a lot of things in perspective. And the emotion there was a little bit more in terms of fear, right? But again, bounce back happened in a year, 2 years, and the world recovered. Subsequently, I think there were other natural disasters that came in, the SARS epidemic, which I can sort of relate to today. The first version happened in 2003, right? But the businesses were going on because these were localized instances, right? They were not sort of what we call as pandemic across every country, right? And around as the huge credit but low interest rate environment drove growth, right, globally, and monies moved very fast in the hands of consumers. There came in a huge crisis actually in 2008, where Wall Street really sort of bottomed out, right? And age-old companies sort of went bankrupt. Long story there. I think many of you already know the reasons for that. Driven partly by the real estate market and partly by the huge amount of bets on the derivative markets. But that really led to a fundamental way in which we had to relook at how we do our applications and how we do business, right? And so business understanding is extremely crucial, because that's the juncture that I would say that most of our analytics modeling went out the door within an hour, not within a month or a year, not within a week, but within an hour. The bank I was working for had runoffs of $1 billion of deposits a day, right? So no models which were based on pricing and elasticity could work, right? Because the outliers became the norm. So new normal at that point, the outliers are the models, right? And the outlier could be, for example, not price, but it could be safety, security, right? And so the emotion there was security, right? Very different emotion. You fast forward a little bit, another natural disaster hit, again a pandemic in 2012 called MERS. In between, there was man-made disasters as well, but there was, the world came to a stop for 7 days when the Iceland volcano happened. I know I was stranded in Egypt that time, in London for 7 days, no travel, right? So these situations make you learn a lot of different things as to what's happening. You fast forward to 2020 now, right? And you look at the situation that's occurred with COVID-19. I do think that this is a little different. The mortality rate may be much lower than the previous epidemics, honestly. But the fact is that the global interdependence driven by digitalization is so huge, right? And the supply chain markets are so dependent on each other, right? A breakage in one will cause a ripple effect across others. So, what do you think will happen when there's a breakage across the globe at the same time, right? The world stops. And so, the economic upheaval that may be caused and the recovery for this may take a little bit of time, much longer than perhaps we have experienced in the past. And I think it's really important for people to be able to focus. And we can talk a little bit more about this in the subsequent dialogue when we talk about the application of analytics to be able to get through and using that experience to be able to help through such times for businesses as well as for individuals.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Rajiv. I think this is a pretty insightful start, and the way you laid out the stuffs in a chronological order, starting from 1990s, where moving from product centricity to customer centricity, then having that feedback loop, so that one gets better in the productization through different events that happened along the way, right? And as you pointed out, some of those are man-made. I myself was in the thick of things in 2007, 2008, when we kind of went through that financial crisis, and the housing market mortgage was kind of known to be the culprit that was driving the show, and I was kind of middle of the things, involved in a lot of activities around that space. Now, as you pointed out, it's the difference is at that point in time, many things are man-made. The financial instruments or the institutions which started crashing, and there's a cascading effect that happened in 2008 and 9. But now the situation is different. As you pointed out, we are so connected and interdependent on each other, and this phenomena is an act of God, and it's global, right? Now, through this, one thing that is getting highlighted, and for those who know you closely, and I being the one, I know the value that you give to experience, right? And for you, experience doesn't mean being there, but how do you reflect and connect the dots and utilize that experience for optimizing the action in the future. So I wanted you to, for the participants here, I wanted you to highlight and give your perspectives on the thought behind the experience that you value, and how do you bring in, connect threads in to what we are trying to do in Analyttica in terms of propelling the businesses through experience analytics and AI.
Yeah. That's a good question, Satyamoy. I think we can go on for quite some time, and but I'll tell you this, that the analytics is, in the end, it's not a tool, right? It's not a process. Also, analytics is, in my view, an application. It's a culture, right? It's built on a thought process that enables you to move forward with a calculated risk, and with the thought of mitigating the risk aspects, right? And the moment you turn it into a process or a tool, you lose some of those dimensions, right? And so those are the intangible dimensions that come from you being exposed to a variety of different situations, you being exposed to a variety of different dimensions that enable you to make the right decision. Analytics has to help you converge in a way that you make a calculated risk and make a decision that is more right than perhaps on a random basis, that is more right than perhaps the wrong ones that may happen, right? So the question is, how do you converge continuously? Like I call it asymptotic convergence, right? There's never an end point that you say I've stopped, right? But you continuously make it better and better incrementally. So I'll give you one example, right? And I think that will make things a little bit clearer in terms of how these softer dimensions come into impact, right? One thing I will tell you is that analytics, and even Analyttica, what it's trying to do today, is a very strong proponent of business integration to what it's doing today. And what do I mean by that? I got the opportunity to learn right through these years. I was an engineer. I was an analyst. I was a CFO. I worked roles in marketing risk, etc. And I got exposed, and it was a great learning journey. I went to management as well, and I got the exposure across 25 countries, right? 25 markets and portfolios there. And one thing stood out, that unless you understand the business, right? However much your terms of your systems are Python, or whether it's statistical tools or algorithmic tools or data sciences, machine learning, AI, right? Your ability to be able to apply that, dissect that, right? And understand the problem and then create an approach to solve analytically and then communicate that back to the business is extremely crucial, right? So I'll tell you, 2007 you talked about, right? 2008. You talked about that crisis, and you said, that a lot of us were actually present trying to figure things out at that point. Now, the science of this could actually, you could go back to the era of late 90s, early 2000s, right? And the United States started putting in a lower interest rate environment to drive growth, as I said, to give credit out there, right? And that was driven by a situation because of the dot-com burst. They wanted the economy to be able to continuously grow, right? And so when you have that situation going on years and years, and at some point, the real estate market also was quite strong in the United States, right? Year over year, it was going up more than 20%, right? So you have an extremely low interest rate environment, right? In a big to be able to fuel economy growth, and you have a strong real happen, right? At some point, the historical learnings are lost, and the sort of the financial institutions are taking a leap of faith to be able to say this will go on for 1 or 2 more years, and I will start giving credit at much lower, at better value propositions, right? So banks started giving credit to consumers, for example, at 100% or 120% the loan to value of their houses, right? So what do you happen? What will happen if a house price crashes even 10% there, right? It's going to be a massive recall, a margin recall, and as well as ability for consumers if they can't pay a foreclosure. And so small correction in the market, they were highly leveraged, right? And then you built your derivative models on top of it, right? So, in 2004, right, when I was sort of working and has just come from my CFO back into building an advanced analytical capability for this bank, a business manager, right, came and the CFO came to me and said, my balance sheet is bleeding. And this was on a credit card product, which is kind of an unsecured debt, unsecured lending, right? And my balance sheet is bleeding, help me. Now, if you give that to a data scientist of today, the answer is probably going to be, okay, help me understand what the problem is. I don't understand balance sheets, but if you're asking me to build let's say, a balance model or a response model, I'll do it for you, right? There is a breakage where the problem needs to be understood as to why balances on unsecured debt were bleeding, and then how do you sort of get an analytical back to the business, right? Yeah. What was happening was that the heavy low interest rate environment in the mortgage and in the HELOC, which is the home equity loan space, started playing into effect at a very high real estate value, giving the lot of credit to the consumers, in the hand of consumers. So the house was worth 120,000 and their cost was only 80,000. They have a $40,000 loan that was available immediately at their hands. They took that, and what happens is the high rate loans start getting paid off, which is, so if there's a crisis, what do you pay off first? You pay off your unsecured debt. Yep. You pay off the high rate loans, and the unsecured debt was being paid off, which is the credit card debt, right? It happened not across the globe. It happened with the affluent customers in a very small segment, 0.5%, right? Now, putting that and analyzing that and getting that was a needle in a haystack, right? Understanding that in the first place was an analyst's job. It wasn't a business job, right? And the business could only see the aggregates, right? And so I bring that forth to be able to, in this example, to show why it's crucial to be able to, it took us a year, honestly, to get to that needle in a haystack, right? And a year and many people to be able to look at that and slicing and dicing across a huge portfolio of almost $150 billion in assets, right? So, but that's what I'm trying to say, that the business integration becomes extremely, extremely crucial. and the experience to be able to work with through in a business situation is not just a function of your tools or your techniques or your algorithms or your programming languages. It's the ability to draw and extract that knowledge, work on it through your techniques, and then extract that knowledge back and put it back in the business.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense, Rajiv. And now I'm getting into the next segment of my set of questions. So, as you suggested, and as you keep saying on and off, that analytics is perhaps the right blend of art and science, and many people out there mistake it as a tool, technique, or a pure science. But when situation changes, then science don't work, right? So one of my mentors used to say that. Analytics is tougher than rocket science because rocket science follows a principle. If you know the formula right, you know where to place the rocket and how. But you are actually dealing with human behavior, which keeps on changing and which is irrational as science want to work. Now, I think one of the questions that I keep getting many times, I'm sure you do as well, and I'm sure many of us present here who are just starting their career or probably students or young professionals. I think one thing that they will ask is, how do you get that experience, right? Unless you are there, unless you actually go through the situation, how do you get that experience? And if you don't get the experience, how do you apply yourself? So it's kind of what comes first. So how do you address that, Rajiv, when you say that application of experience is very, very important, but in order to apply, you need to get that experience. So how do we solve that?
Yeah,
What is the thought
it's a
process?
chicken and egg, but I think there is a way to be able to look at it, and you replicate life's journey in a way that you can understand it very quickly with the tools and technologies we have today, right? So you look at I look at my journey, right, and I look at the times in which I had to go and learn and relearn things. And unlearn as well, right? I had to unlearn many things. It's a tough thing to do, but I had to be exposed and adapt to new normals and new situations. And that came through obviously a period of time, but that came through the willingness to learn, but as well as the ability to apply myself to those learnings into the business at those points in time. Now that is an expanded out multi-year journey, right? But the fact is that if you break that down and you say that, many people, so today many people say that I learn from being told what to do, right? Many people today say that I learn from being trained. So give me a classroom session, give me a homework, give me an assessment, instruct me, whether remotely or in closed walls, and then I will go and apply. The problem with that education system is very simple, that unless you do that stuff yourself, you will forget that, right? And probably as you exit that door, right, of training, you'll probably forget 50% at that point itself, at that doorway. And then another 50% probably end up applying only 5 to 10% of that, right? So the problem with that is that while it exposes you to certain things, it doesn't make you experience that journey, right? And so what we have been doing, and in my journey as well, I've thought this through a number of times, that I learned best. In fact, there is research which says 90% of your learning comes from doing, right? And I said, why can't we replicate this multi-year journey and bring it to your fingertips in a few months, right? And make it domain specific with your financial services, with your retail, healthcare, et cetera, right? But contextualize it with an ability to keep the analytics learning back into the play to make business impact. And we sort of have been experimenting with this. You have been part of the journey as well over the last 7 years to bring that experience to life by doing a lot of innovation in this space and bringing it through simulations and other ways virtually at your fingertips, right? And so to be able to bring forth an engine to you that can be molded in your domain to your specific requirements, right? And that we can talk about ATH leaps, and which you're going to hear subsequently. But that's fundamental, that thought process into this whole learning, applying, going back to learning, applying, and then actually solving, right? Without guidance, but going back to learning, so that whole cycle becomes seamless, right? Of learn, apply, and solve.
Right. So yeah. I mean, I think it definitely highlights, right, that there's a gap out there in terms of how the education system or how the learning as such on the whole is being perceived. So that brings perhaps the next question as to when you conceived Analyttica Treasure Hunt as a platform, right? And you're a firm believer in a lifelong learning kind of abilities and learning application and solutioning. So how do you see blending of all this together coming in place, and what is the essence behind the platform, the IP that we have, and what is the idea behind opening it up outside now, so that we can kind of propel that kind of a thought process of learning application and solutioning?
So I would say, Satyamoy, that there are a few things that are more important for this generation, the coming few years, that drive that thought process, and that has driven me as well, and all of our team members to put forth this platform called TreasureHunt, right? See, learning, applying, and solving is no doubt a framework that we have created. But the basic intangibles that drive that framework is learning not just the hard skills, right? But it's very important to understand that you learn how to learn itself,
Right.
versus learning an end point with an end point in mind, right? When you learn with an end point in mind, which is the hard skills, like you learn Python or you learn R, or you learn a tool or a technique, you learn machine learning, or you learn how to build certain products, right? These are endpoints in itself, and as technology evolves, newer tools, newer languages they start developing, you kind of run into a roadblock, then you have to relearn, right? But if you learn how to learn quickly, right, then you are continuously updating yourself, because you're learning here, your reflexes are being honed on, right? And that process was the one that I wanted to be able to instill a little bit into the creation of TreasureHunt. And I called it asymptotic convergence, right? There's no end point there, right? You're continuously, iteratively doing more and more. But the ability, it's like TreasureHunt because it's the game of riddles, right? You're trying to solve, except that the treasure is a moving target and you're continuously running behind it. You can stop at any point and reap the rewards, but you can probably do better and better with a little bit more effort. So to enable that, we had to figure out a way in which we compress, and this is what you get through experience and exposure over years, to compress that into a very small, sort of compressed time frame and a virtual ability to be able to bring in front of you. And that's what that's why TreasureHunt was born, right? And the ability in our boundary, which is the ability to apply analytics to solve business problems, right? Contextually. Then came the thought that absolutely, if I were to be able to expose that person, then I also want them to be able to understand that the thought behind it is not just that I am dealing with a structured set of problems, right? The ability to deal with the unstructured, the ability to deal with a little bit gray area. So not always black and white. That's what happens for business, right? You have a problem, the balance sheet is bleeding, it's very gray. Now you got to turn it into black and white and create an analytical problem out of it to be able to solve it, right? That thought process also had to be brought into play through this whole journey to be able to make it come to life in a graded manner. So I see that as a journey was an end point, and that also fueled this this treasure. And lastly, I tell you this, that learning and training and solving requires a little bit of hand holding, but requires a lot of self-motivation, right? It requires a lot of willingness and ability. As things change, you have to be able to adapt and take yourself to that aspect, right? And so no tool, no technique, no process will get you there, because as you said, it's not a rocket science that I have a formula I can do that. A lot of it rests here, and your motivation is extremely important, which will be the winning factor in terms of these things. So we are enablers. The end point is you, right?
So I think that's very important for everybody to understand that that what is the one skill that's going to be sought after lifelong is how do you apply yourself in first principle? How do you quickly learn new stuffs and move on and not carry something which can probably act as a baggage for you, given in the dynamic world today, and all the more it's going to change, right? So I think one of the essence of our IP, and that's where we have our design patent on in the innovation in the education space, is how do you actually enable somebody to learn better, faster, and apply themselves quickly. And that is where perhaps we are solving, or kind of scratching the surface and solving the problem of ability to not being there, as may not be no longer a gap in terms of absence of experience, right? So if we solve for that, then we are actually offering somebody to continue to be in a continuous learning path and apply themselves to be future ready, right? So that comes to the last question, and I think we can go on and on. Rajiv, you touched quite a few things, right? You painted a picture in terms of how your journey has been, how you reflected on how you applied yourself, how you coined Analyttica, TreasureHunt, and how are we kind of poised today to take it out there for everybody to come and experience, right? So one last question, and then I'll kind of open it up for everybody to get a chance to ask questions to you. Is to given all this, right, and given we are in an uncertain time, and as you know, things are changing by the day, and hopefully things will become normal soon. But is the normal is the definition of normal going to be changed? What does somebody who is just entering the professional space, or who are in their mid of their career, what is that they need to expect? What is that they need to be prepared for to strive through this journey, and be positive and strive their careers towards the right direction?
You're right. That's. I wish I had a mentor who would have given me the answer for that as well in my journey, right? So I can only help talk from my experiences, and I'm sure there's many others who have good points of view here as well. My learning tells me a couple of things, right? That as we are poised in this situation today in the market, right? And it's not a usual market condition today as we expect, as we see from our historical curves, right? Even analytics fails here, right? To a large extent because it's a natural event. But and also because the line of sight is only a function of as fast as human beings can sort of bounce back with certain sort of cures that they may sort of have for such an event, right? And that is still an uncertain event. We don't have line of sight for that, which means that the recovery will probably take a little bit more time than perhaps we expect, because there is no end in sight for the current event. The businesses and the economic situations that may cause that upheaval may have a hard time. Some of them may never come back. Now, some of the industries may not come back, right? And so that will almost define a new normal in that sense. As to what that is. Now, when you think closer to our space of analytics and applied analytics and artificial intelligence as well, and now this has been going on the last 5-7 years at a tremendous pace, right? 10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought of Tesla coming out with a self-driving car, or a massive. You look at the markets right now. You have the traditional sort of auto companies really struggling to keep up. Whereas a company like Tesla is doing extremely well. Now the question is, where is it headed, right? And how do you think this is going to occur for, let's say, our space, which is data science and applied analytics? My view is very simple. I stick back to the three things I mentioned earlier, right? That technology will continue to outpace the ability for us to be able to do the same thing that we used to do in a manner that will be very, very different, right? And so this is a challenge for many human beings, but I see it as an opportunity, because the opportunity is the fact that you can do things that you couldn't do before. The thought process, the critical thought process. Let technology take over all the automation stuff, right? Don't worry about all that, right? So what's important for you is to be able to unlearn certain things and not bias yourself,
Right.
and to be able to ensure that you're prepared to learn new things continuously, right? And the ability to learn is more important than the learning itself, right? And secondly, I will say that the volatility in the economy is high, right? And it's not like you can go through economic curves of the traditional 10-year curves or 7-year curves. Now, every 2-3 years, as technology revolution propels it, you have to be prepared to be able to deal with things that you have not experienced before, right? And so exposing yourself to those situations more and more where it's uncomfortable, right? Exposing yourself to discomfort is extremely important, right? But take risks, take calculated risk, leverage the power of your capabilities to take those calculated risks, right? You will fail, but over time, the 80-20 rule holds and you will make the right decisions very, very speedily, right? Lastly, I would say that, this is an exciting world that we are coming into. It is an extremely positive way to be able to look at opportunities. Could become extremely challenging, right? If you don't have the willingness or the motivation or the mindset to be able to adapt to it, right? Be hungry, right? Steve Jobs said, stay hungry, stay foolish. I why with that, right? I really believe in that. And it's your opportunity right now to be able to differentiate yourself amongst the others.
Great. Thank you, Rajiv. So it has been wonderful. I'm sure 30 minutes cannot do justice to all that you have to share and talk about. But I'm sure everybody will get more opportunities to be part of this kind of discussions. So with that, I will pause here. I'll end here, and I will open it up for questions and interactions. And if some of you don't get an opportunity to ask a question to Rajiv because of the time constraint, please feel free to reach out to him directly, or any of us in Analyttica, and we'll make sure that you get a response. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Satyamoy. Thanks all of you. Looking forward.
So the title of our next section, that is Common Sense in AI, is pretty trivial as well as interesting at the same time. So common sense in natural language processing. So NLP, as you know, is one of the most interesting frontier of machine learning and AI at this time. Today, we have multiple algorithms to identify a hidden sentiment, group of words, or to extract information from a text. However, these algorithms are not attuned for business context every time, and where they are being applied, which creates a gap between a business problem and the analytical solution. So in this session, we will explore a bit more about how we can bridge this gap. And joining us on this is the Vice President of Client Solutions and Product Strategy at Analyttica Data Labs, Madhav Kaushik. Hi, Madhav.
Hey, Varun. Thank you for the quick intro. So are you able to see my screen?
Yeah. So just an intro to Madhav. Madhav has more than a decade of experience in analytics and data science across different industry, with domain expertise in banking and financial services. He was recently recognized as a leading data scientist and the young leader, as well as the part of the group awarded 40 under 40 data scientists of India by Analytics India magazine. So welcome, Madhav.
Thanks again, Varun. Thank you for the kind words. So as I'm just setting this up, just bear with me. I'll just confirm with Varun if you're able to see my screen. I am just sharing a presentation.
Yes, you can see the presentation.
Okay, great. So then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Good evening, early good morning. As I heard Satyamoy saying that, we have folks across the globe. So today, as Varun mentioned, I'll be kind of talking about three concepts: common sense knowledge, AI solutions, and business impact. And to bring these concepts together, I'll take an example of an advanced NLP solution that we had developed and successfully implemented in a healthcare domain for one of our clients. Before we jump in, though, I would like to highlight the significant contributions of two distinct individuals in the fields of common sense knowledge and AI. The first being Scott Adams for his continued contribution towards common sense knowledge via his series Dilbert. I'm an avid follower. And as you see here, both Dilbert and Wally are interacting with the robot. And clearly, there seems to be a difference of perspective between Dilbert, Wally, and the robot. I think we are all are getting into, we have all seen cartoons in terms of machine learning and how machines learn and how it can go all right and wrong. But I think Scott Adams has always been a pioneer and frontier in terms of articulating these aspects. Uh, Second, I would like to call out, the contributions of Alan Turing. Alan, who is considered the father of AI for his work in terms of machine learning, explaining AI in terms of, even designing the Turing test, where he is recognized as the father of theoretical computer science. And the Turing test basically talks about the ability of a machine to exhibit intelligent behavior, which is almost indistinguishable, of that of a person or a human. So with that, given that you're focusing on AI and common sense knowledge, so in the sphere of AI research, we don't have common sense, but we have common sense knowledge. So what exactly is common sense knowledge? So common sense knowledge, in the sphere of AI research also means, things that one would one should know in terms of, which are common in terms of consists of the facts of everyday world, like lemons are sour, that all humans would know. Lemons are sour, deposit your money in a bank. So taking that example of depositing your money in a bank, uh, when we start talking about, a bank deposit, so these two words, uh, what is it that comes to your mind? So for example, the first thought that comes to mind is a financial institution where, the process is that you are going to deposit your money or your precious gems, jewelry, uh, with the idea that, you can take it out whenever you want. So now if I bring on the second picture on the screen, so you will see that a bank deposit in this picture, uh, the meaning of it completely changes. Here, the bank deposit means the deposits of sand rich in minerals on the bank of a river. And even the process of a bank deposit changes, where here we are actually not depositing, but the process associated with these words would be where you are actually taking out these deposits from the sand, and you might actually sell those out for money. And similarly, if I were to take this example of the third picture, which is bags of blood, here now the focus is again on the two words bank deposit, where my process and the meaning and context of these two words changes completely. The process here is that you're actually giving away your blood to a bank for a deposit, uh, with the expectation that, it will go to your loved one or for a social cause, uh, and most likely you'll never be receiving that the same thing back again, your own blood, I mean. So from the point of this example being that the same set of words can have a completely different set of meanings, processes associated with them, perspectives, and even experiences. And even though they are the same two words, the context behind each of those can be very, very different. Hence, today when we start talking about application of AI solution in a business domain, so this contextualization of common sense knowledge, which is basically knowledge of the business domain, becomes extremely important. It's very, very significant. Uh, so the said, in other words, contextualization of the information to make business sense is what it means to have incorporation of this common sense knowledge in these AI solutions. And as you can see from these above examples, if these two words were to be taken out in a different context, in these three different business scenarios, be it mining of a riverbank, a healthcare industry, or a financial institution, they can give very, very different examples, and they can come up with very, very different insights, which can only make sense if they are being applied in the right business domain and with the right contextualization. With that, what I will like to do is take you through one of the examples that I have mentioned, how we can bring together this overall concept of contextualization in AI through one of the NLP solutions that we had built. So here, what we will do is we have been working as one of our clients. We have been working with a US-based healthcare provider who are responsible, where the problem that they're trying to solve is that they want to identify priority stubs out of all the stubs that are raised, and these priority stubs need to be reported to a regulatory body within 7 days of the stub raise date. Now, to achieve this objective, the business wanted to leverage the power of AI, and to build like an NLP solution so that they are able to mitigate the risk and optimize their business actions. Uh, Given the domain, the risk to the business here is manifold. The primary risk here being patient safety. So a stub is categorized as a priority stub if it can lead to a patient safety issue. And a stub can also be, in terms of how to visualize a stub, is basically a ticket, for example, being raised as part of a process. So when you're trying to identify a ticket which can actually lead to a patient safety issue, that can have a critical impact, not just on the business itself, which is the healthcare provider here, but also on the patient. And it can have multifold, issues in terms of not just that the healthcare provider can lose trust very quickly. If there is issues with the patient safety, I'm sure that none of the patients or around the community would be willing to go to that healthcare provider. So these are two examples that we have listed out in terms of what would be what can be associated with as a priority stub versus a non-priority stub. So for example, a little bit of description in terms of what is the data that we'll be able to collect from a priority stub is, so we had the heading, which is being filled out by the people working at the healthcare provider. It can be nurses or any other admin people, uh, employees, so which will be kind of filling out the subject, which is predominantly in free flow handwriting, along with some description of the stub. So for example, on the left, what I see is, urgent, having trouble sending out medication list to the pharmacy. All medications sent are pending status. Now here the issue is that whatever pharmacy lists that are being generated that are needed, there is some breakage in the process. They are being held out somewhere. Pharmacy is not getting the list, so they are not able to release those items. Now, if somebody is in a critical care, can be very relevant to the current scenario we all are in. If you need some of these emergency equipment and there is a breakage just because of a process, now this can lead to a big issue from patient safety perspective. You'll not get the right pharmacy or the medicine or the equipment, and the patient who is, let's say, is being treated in a critical care, that few seconds can actually be a make or break. So definitely this is a priority issue. So the stub being raised here needs to be dealt immediately. And even before being dealt, it needs to be categorized that it's a priority so that it can be dealt pretty quickly. On the right, what we see is again an example of a stub that is being raised. So we have the subject line and then we have the description. Now here the description and subject again looks pretty urgent. We are talking about data coming out from a healthcare domain, so everything is urgent. But again, between all those urgencies, how do we define what is priority? So here you see that the somebody has kind of logged in that they have been logged out of the system, a need a password reset urgently. These issues usually arise from different nursing stations which are used for future scheduling. Now here, that context kind of provides the ability for us to say, okay, although it looks very urgent, somebody might be needing it right now, but at the same time, we know from the contextualization of this data coming from the backend where this stubs can be raised or these issues tend to occur, we know this does not really lead to a patient safety issue and hence is a not priority stub. So having classified the two, we'll kind of move forward as to what we did in terms of building out a solution, an advanced NLP solution, to say what are these, how can we predict which ones of these stubs are priority stubs, then which can be quickly taken up for resolution and also being shared with the regulatory body. So as part of building out an NLP solution, we followed the process which is kind of laid out. So we started with our overall data gathering exercise. We are building a corpus of all the data available from the priority stubs, from all the stubs available. And here, the first piece was to make sure that we are actually analyzing the right data. So we only wanted to take data into consideration, which is coming from the subject line, which is coming from the description, and to remove any data set or any data that's available in these stubs, which can be again in the text format, but is not relevant to our analysis or the objective. For example, you can have a lot of TNCs conditions, some operator numbers, IDs, details laid out as part of the contract. So these are also available in text, but if we were to incorporate all that data, that would really basically dilute the data that we have in terms of focusing on our objective. So we had to make sure that we are building a corpus of the right data, which was based on the, as I said, the subject and the details provided. Once we had that, we did a basic level of analysis on the gathered corpus, like frequency of count of total number of words, identifying special characters, stop words, etc. And from there, as the next step, we started with some basic pre-processing, like case correction, making everything to a lowercase, stop word removal, stemming, and tokenization. This was followed by some advanced pre-processing, which included n-gram generation, where we, for this specific analysis, we went up to 3 n-grams, and then followed by a TF-ID generation. Now that our data is ready, the idea was to start applying some models to see which can be a good fit. And for that, we first started out with the naive-based classification algorithm. And as you see, we are getting an accuracy of almost 80%, where we are able to classify 80% of the priority stubs as priority stubs, which is a pretty good start. And then we tried some further iterations. We kind of built about 4,000 trees from a random forest, applying a random forest algorithm. And we are able to push this overall classification accuracy to 95%. So we are able to identify or classify 95% of the stubs, of the priority stubs, as priority stubs, which is, I would say, is a pretty good result, and a result which also held in terms of our test and learn framework. So when we build the model and then we kind of test it out again on the holdout sample, the accuracy only kind of dropped to about 92, 93%. So which is a very, very good result. But now again, coming back in terms of the context of this problem, right? The objective here is that we need to identify if there can be a ticket raised which can lead to patient safety. So even though we are achieving a very good result of 95%, where we are able to identify this of this, and for this we are leveraging 60% of the population, which is majority of the population, we are still going to miss 5% of the stubs which are priority, which will be classified as not priority. Now that means that there can be 5% of issues that can trickle down from this algorithm and can lead to patient safety, which is a big no-go, which is again as good as saying that, I'm able to classify 50% of the stubs and 50% I have to find another way to make sure that I don't miss any, because every single patient life is important. So we went back to the business with these hypotheses, with these results, and business had the same questions to us that, this is really good, but then how do we kind of push the limits to here? We are really looking towards 100% accuracy here. Now, to build this out, we kind of went back to the drawing board to understand, okay, what all data we have. Until now, we have been using a lot of good algorithms, which are popularly used in the industry, and we have been able to gain good efficiency in terms of increasing our accuracy, leveraging different types of algorithms as well. But can we do something differently here? So then we kind of came back. So we have a data for the healthcare provider for the last 10 years, for all these stubs being raised out across different time periods. So we had more than 1 million records of data available. So we said, why not first we train our data to make sure that we have the right contextualization happening from there. So we are able to pick the right words based on which we want to predict and build our objective function, so that we are building our NLP solution on those objectives. And for that, we researched and we found that one of the algorithms being used there is Google's word2vec, which can help us to sort of contextualize our data based on what our objectives are. So we went back to the board where we said, okay, now the first point is that we need to contextualize our data. So we started with our overall build corpus. We took all the 1 million rows data points that we had spanning across last 10 years, which also gave us much more data in terms of not just training the Google's word2vec algorithm on our data set, but also making sure that we are capturing a lot of variability in the data over the past years as well. And then we kind of went through the same process of information retrieval, basic pre-processing, cleaning out the data. And in terms of the advanced pre-processing, that's where we apply the Google word2vec algorithm using a single layer neural network. And once we were able to apply that, and then we applied a multi-layer perceptron model to have the final model being applied on the new data set that was available, which was contextualized based on the objective, we were able to achieve an accuracy of 99.7%. Now, this is almost close to 100%, and the business feels pretty good about it in terms of testing it out, having to make sure that the algorithm that we are running, the solution that is being implemented at their end, is able to get them almost 100% of the accuracy needed from a classification perspective. And so this solution that was built over a couple of months of time was built by Analyttica through our internal team of experts and data scientists on our patent platforms. And then we were able to kind of implement this for the business, and they're pretty happy. But we felt that, we are at 99.7%. Can we take it to 100%? So, we again striving for better. So from there now, Google has moved from word to vec to BERT. So we thought, why can't we? So we are in the process of building that out and, building prototypes where we can go beyond 99.7% and have a much more robust and strong algorithms, which can then be leveraged to build very specific and sophisticated solutions, which are very, very relevant in today's space as well. Now, as we're talking about in terms of as part of the process, what I would want to highlight is that this is something that that somebody did not really give us this approach. As part of this overall learning, we had the machines available to us. We had a lot of information available to us in-house, outside. So it's a continuous learning. So in our last discussion also, we did talk a lot about, right, that it has to be about continuous learning, trying to understand from your data, trying to see where we need to be headed, being very, very closely tied to your objectives that you're trying to reach. And so what we have tried to do here is that with this today's event around the launch of our Leaps platform, we are trying to bring some aspects of these different business offerings that we have from a platform perspective, which are today where we are integrated with some of the big businesses across India and US. We are kind of bringing out and opening up so that everybody can start taking on that journey in terms of how do you start building about that process, that you are being very, very objective, you are very focused in terms of what the business requirements are. You are able to contextualize those requirements as you're not trying to build those solutions from an analytical or a machine learning perspective. And we are not just trying to apply algorithms, right? Because today we do hear a lot about that, we can start applying very fancy algorithms, but it's at the end, it's all about generating that impact. It's all tied back to the contextualized to the business problem. Is it being developed for the right domain? Is the objective clearly defined? And with that, how we can start leveraging some of these aspects as part of the next session or the next phase of my talk. I will kind of walk us through the Leaps platform. What are the different aspects that you can start leveraging on the platform itself? We have a different slew of algorithms which can be picked up from there. But then once you apply an algorithm, how you make sense of it, how you apply it to the business scenario, how you apply in the right domain, with the right constraints, and then you create value. So we'll kind of switch gears a little bit, jump onto the Leaps platform, have a quick walk through how we can get ourselves a little bit handy and start running there, and then I'll pause for questions. Varun, does that sound good?
Yeah, Madhav, sounds perfect.
Okay, so I'll just stop sharing my screen. And so I have logged into my Leaps platform. So the platform is at leaps.analytica.com. And I have already signed in. Anybody should be able to, once you're on the portal page, you should be able to log in pretty quickly with your email ID. It's free. You can get started in no time. And as you're on the platform, I can give you a quick overview. So we have different aspects that we have tried to bring together from our past learnings, like Rajiv and Satyamoy also mentioned that, we have tried to bring the experience, what we have been hearing from the industry. We have partnered with some of the big names in India and US. What we are doing for them, how can we bring that, out here so that everybody can start experiencing what we have. So you'll start seeing certain aspects of learn, apply, solve. So this is the framework where we have tried to build everything together, and learn, apply, solve together helps us to bring up to Leaps. So learns are, so we have a lot of applied courses available today on Leaps, which again are free for somebody to just dive in, start focusing on what their journey is, where do you want to start. We have some basic level courses, which shouldn't take you more than 20 to 30 hours to kind of focus on from a dedicated effort perspective. We have some advanced level courses as well that you can start focusing on. Uh, then we have a slew of different what we call as cases. Now, so I think Satyamoy kind of alluded to these a little bit. Here, what you'll start seeing is across different industry domains. What we have put together is different cases which start talking about, application of some of the complex or simple machine learning algorithms in different spheres. For example, NLP, uh, healthcare, classification or prediction problems, and then how these can be applied in different industry domains for solving different industry problems. For example, one of the very, I would say, robustly used techniques or commonly used techniques is logistic regression. Uh, Very, very popular classification technique. Now, how it is deployed from a marketing scenario versus a risk scenario has its own nuances. So a lot of these cases will help you to go through how different techniques, can be applied to these different scenarios. We have examples of some of the most upcoming cases and from an IoT perspective. How can you get familiar with data coming out from different IoT devices and start interpreting and analyzing that to recognize human activity. So we have seen examples, right, that you have trackers, you have watches, our smartphones. They are capturing a lot of the activity that we are doing. We are walking. You can see the steps that you walked in a day on your smartphone without really switching it on, that device. So how are they kind of capturing it when they try get the data out? How is the data? How does that data look? So you can start dwelling into these, focusing into these uh, from that perspective. I think I'm not sharing my screen. Hey, so are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, Madhav.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, as I was saying, so there's a slew of different
Madhav,
cases. Yes.
sorry, just a pause. So for our participants there, I hope that you have registered on the Leaps platform. So what Madhav is showing you is basically you can go through once you have registered. So on the Leaps platform, you can, when scrolling down, you can have that option. So Madhav is logged in, but on the top right corner, you can find your section to log in. And from there, after signing up, you can go through all the cases and the other courses that Madhav will be explaining.
Thank you, Varun. Sorry about that. So okay, so picking up from where we were, so I think what we can do is hoping that all of you, or at least some of you, have logged in. If you have not, it's all free. Just log into leaps.analyttica.com, and from there we can get started. We have some hackathons which will be coming up pretty soon. We already have a series of webinars that are already in place, so uh, that will be rolling out from today onwards. And for, I would say, to get the maximum out of them, it would be best to have yourself logged in the Leaps platform. We'll be taking you through different hands-on cases as to how it can be applied, not just from a Leaps perspective, but in terms of getting the right exposure to the data. How do you start thinking about the problem? What is the framework that you want to focus on? So it will be a very comprehensive sessions that are coming up, which are scheduled on a weekly basis. We have a few blogs that you can go through. There are podcasts with some of the industry leaders. You'll be able to hear a lot more from Rajiv and Satyamoy here as well. So pretty good portal to be part of as well, as I think Satyamoy mentioned. So we do have this COVID analysis where we kind of updating this on a daily basis to see how it's being tracked. The analysis kind of being tracked and the response from different countries, how the situation is. And this is actually completely built in Leaps. So you can actually try your hands out. You have these data sets available out there in the open source. So you should be able to kind of, get to the data available. And let's say if you have this data available and you want to kind of start building something on yourself, I can quickly walk you through the process in terms of how to do that. So in apply, once you're there, you can actually go to my cases. So actually we can, let's go ahead and create a case. So we can just create a case, say a demo case for and can select the category just in the interest of time. So I will be kind of brought into the case, and feel free to upload any data sets that you might have. It allows for that. Otherwise, there's a slew of data sets available to you across different domains, that you can just quickly pick up. I'll just take, a quick category and say, okay, let me just take some customer complaints data. We've been talking about some NLP solutions. And as you can see, so once it'll take a bit of time to get your data uploaded here, and so by the time your data is getting uploaded, you can see the different features available on the screen. So for example, let me see. So you have different aspects of the data available to you. You can actually upload any data set that you might have. And once you have available, the data is available to you, you can actually start working through the same. So on the left-hand side that you will see is, so you have the data available to you. On the left-hand side that you are able to see the different, so we, as mentioned earlier, so we have more than 600 plus algorithms available to you, available to anyone actually, in terms of being able to leverage this out across different function families, starting from your data management, data mining, aspects of visualization, which has a complete suite of interactive and static functions available across different types of visualizations, maths and stats, a very robust family for machine learning, which encompasses regression, classification, clustering, uh, ability to even apply some of these models, as you're kind of building out different model objects, and then complete suite of time series analysis, as well as text analytics. So, as you're kind of going through some of these NLP problems as to how they can be built, so you can actually start leveraging a lot of these available algorithms to start building up your case. I can take you a quick example as to how to do that. Very simplistic format. Whatever data that you have, you can just click here, or you will be able to kind of click it out available from the table section. I have selected the column that I want to run on. Let me start by building a corpus. For every algorithm that you're trying to run, you will have a description available, so you can actually go through this, understand what are your input requirements, how the output will be, and how to take inference from those. In this case, I'm just trying to build a big corpus, so I'll not give any separators. I can execute, and in a click of a button, we'll be able to execute our functions, and so we have our results available. As even in the result section, you can see that you have different aspects of trying to have a deep understanding of what the codes are, how those can be leveraged. You can plug in your notes. You can actually pin any of these results that you have. And what it does is pinning anything here will give you, will take these to the dashboards, where you can actually take them up and build out your own dashboard, like the COVID dashboard that I was showing to you, which can be easily shared. You can plan to share this on your social media. You can share it with your friends, your family. If you're leveraging this for doing some analysis that you want to build, you can actually do that as well and share those links. So again, from a execution perspective, it's very simple. I would definitely encourage everyone to go through it, start, bring some of your data sets, start building some analysis, take reference from the different courses available on the Leaps platform. You have a lot of information and guidance available from different cases as well across domains. And in case you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to us. Would be happy to help. So, with that, I'll take a pause and see if there are any questions from anyone.
Sure. So thanks, Madhav, for that. So I like to open the forum for any questions. So feel free to post out your questions, comments in the feedback section or ask a question section, and we'll be streaming them to Madhav. So in the meantime, Madhav, we got some questions. both on Leaps as well as on your presentation before on NLP. So I think I'll start from there. Uh, so in your presentation, you mentioned that you were able to attain almost 100% of accuracy while using word-to-vec algorithm. So do you think that while using this algorithm, it will ascertain that we should be always be getting close to 100% algorithm, 100% accuracy?
Uh, I would say not a certain, but again, as Rajiv and Satyamoy also mentioned, right? So while you're trying to implement certain, while you're trying to solve for certain objectives, and not just from an NLP perspective, but in the wide sphere of machine learning or developing analytical solutions, uh, you have to focus on the approach. In this scenario, word2vec kind of got us the result that we were looking for, but it's not just that we applied word2vec and we were able to get 100%. Once we were able to apply the word2vec, we again had to go through a lot of data cleansing exercises, build out, apply a neural network or multi-perceptron model on that to make sure that whatever we are building, we are able to kind of get that accuracy. And then once we had those results, we had to actually divide that based on the probability deciles that we got. So for some of the top deciles, we continued to hold the probabilities that we were getting from the neural network, but for some of the lower deciles, to make sure that we are able to get the highest available accuracy, we took a combination of different algorithms like uh, the multi-layer perceptron or the random forest. So whichever gave a higher probability, we kind of ingested that. So you again, you have to keep learning even as you kind of following an approach. You have to be very open about applying what you're seeing, so that you're kind of, as you're kind of going through the objective, you should be very clear that what your domain is. Are you still contextualizing the problem to that specific domain? And then based on how far you want to go, and bring all the parties, the business, or if you're doing some research, making sure that everybody aligns that where we are is the right result.
Okay, fair enough. Uh, so another question that comes in is, do you consider that contextualization of is the one of the biggest challenge in NLP? And along with contextualization, uh, what do you think are the major challenges that AI or NLP especially faces today?
Sure. Contextualization definitely is one of the big challenges, right? And I would say not just from an NLP solution perspective, but again, going back to the point that whatever solution that you're trying to build out in the analytical space, any data-driven solutions, they have to be very clearly aligned to an objective. Uh, Today, we are in a scenario where we have lots and lots of data available. We are generating data, uh, like terabytes of data every second. Now, in order to make sense of the data, if we start leveraging all the data available to us, it's like boiling an ocean, and we'll not be able to find the right objective or the solution that we're looking for. So it's always a very good approach that you are able to contextualize what your objective is. And contextualization is not only focused on your objectives, but also what your business domains are. Again, taking the example in terms of the two words of a bank deposit can have varied meanings based on the business problem and the business domain you're trying to solve for. Speaks for itself that especially in an NLP scenario, you are trying to get you're trying to create mathematical solutions based on the text that you have. So you better align that text based on what your business is. Otherwise, you don't want to be applying extraction of deposit from a blood bank that could have very varied results and might not be good in a scenario as well.
Yeah, thanks, Madhav. So we have another question coming in. It says that when starting out on Leaps, do I have to have any prerequisite in terms of coding knowledge, or do I have to have any prior statistical knowledge? Can a person like who is completely like a blank slate and no experience, how can he learn or leverage the Leaps platform?
Sure. I think a very valid question. I think data science has been, I would say, among the top jobs for the last few years. a lot of people, have been wanting to kind of switch careers or at least start their careers in data science. So when you're kind of starting out with leaps, there are no specific, I would say, prerequisites that you need to have, be it from a programming perspective or having, prior knowledge, prior technical knowledge, be it from an engineering background or a statistical background. All these backgrounds definitely would help, to get you a closer understanding. But even if you are starting out without any of these aspects, with some basic understanding of mathematics, uh, I think we have courses today that can help you bring up to speed, because a lot of these courses are not just theoretical courses that will help you to gain theoretical knowledge, but they are applied courses, and they have been divided into different categories, I would say, in terms of some very basic, which will actually cover a lot of building blocks in terms of what your some of the basic statistical concepts are, uh, not just from a theoretical perspective, but how you take those concepts and you start building an analytical solution. We have all gone through, in our school, colleges, we all know what a mean median mode is, but how do you leverage a mean median mode to build an analytical solution? So a lot of these courses will focus on those aspects where they give you the exposure to have an understanding of the underlying data. You're given a data set available to you, uh, where you can then start applying these concepts hands on, and then you kind of bring together these simple concepts to form an analytical approach. So in a nutshell, there are no prerequisites. It's very, very applied. So the more you spend time on it, practice makes all of us perfect. So you'll get close to perfect.
Well said, Madhav. So your answer actually covers a couple of more questions which were around the courses and how is the structure of it. Uh, can you tell on the topic of courses? Can you tell like how does Leaps or Analyttica chooses the courses, and how do they integrate that into our platform? Like, what's the design or thought behind integrating a course?
Sure. So today, for example, let me just quickly. So the way I see, I think there are two parts to that question. One is in terms of what all courses or content is available, and second, what is the structure of a course itself.
Yeah.
So I can give you a quick walkthrough in terms of what the structure is, and then we'll come to the thought process. So as part of the structure, as you see, there are once you enroll into a course, you will have an overview which talks a little bit about the what can you expect from the course. There is a timeline which can give you a quicker sense in the different modules that you will cover as part of the course. Uh, Once you successfully are able to complete the course, you are awarded a certificate from Analyttica. Uh, Again, these are not the only theoretical courses. These are very, very applied courses where the focus is actually, as you enter into a course, it's divided into different modules, which you can think of it as different chapters of a book. And as you start, so for example, you have an overview, you'd be given some learning resources, a module structure, a suggested learning flow in terms of, how should I go about it? And as part of it, you will have some initial guidance available to you in terms of reading materials, audiovisuals aid available that you can consume at your own time. These you can actually, all of it can be accessed through your mobile devices as well. But the focus of the course, the applied course lies in these data cases that we have, where as part of the data case, you will be laid out a learning goal, you will have a business scenario laid out for you. Uh, you will, and as you proceed, these different business scenarios are then broken down into different milestones, where I can actually start focusing on solving these based on what my milestone objectives are. And so I can focus on my milestone objectives, solve for that, submit my results. Once submit, I can actually access something which is very unique to the platform itself, where I can actually go and see how my as a user I did versus if an expert was solving the problem. How they did solve the problem. Now, as I'm kind of solving this out, uh, as a user, I'm not really getting penalized in terms of if I'm doing something extra, but we are also trying to uh, push you in terms of the right direction, that there is sort of a champion challenger concept here, where if there is a solution that's available, there's an approach, and if you're able to modify and better that approach, actually that approach becomes the expert approach. So as you're going through these courses, these data cases become the heart of the course, where you have to take on a very applied approach. Then there are quizzes which help you to focus on, once you have gone through the course, what my answers are. Now you can have right and wrong answers, and this will kind of help you to again, hone in on refining the aspects where you see you could have done better. So this is a structure of a course, and again, we completely believe in the aspect that this has to be applied. Nobody can be a data science practitioner if they are just going through some theoretical concepts. You have to start applying yourself what you're learning, bring those concepts together to form an analytical approach. And so that's what we're trying to bring together as well, as part of these courses. Now, coming to the second part of the question, how these courses are chosen. So today we have brought in certain set of courses, some of them being basic, like basics of data analytics, fundamentals of time series analysis, so you can get started around these concepts. Then there are some, approaches like logistic regression, machine learning, linear regression, objectives, concepts of segmentation, right? So these are some of the very, very I would say commonly used techniques across the analytical continuum. So having a sense of having applied knowledge of these will definitely give you an edge. And there is a very strong connect in terms of what the courses available out there and the apply section, right? So we have a plethora of content of different cases. Now these cases are sort of tying back to some aspect of the course. So for example, we saw a course on different classification techniques. So here you have a case where you are actually taking some of those classification techniques and seeing how to apply that in a very independent scenario in the banking and financial services domain. So you are then kind of honing on to those skills. You went through the course, you did a lot of those data cases available in the course as part of a business scenario, but then how do you come out of that and apply the same technique in a different scenario? So then there is a connection between those. You can actually before even jumping in, you can have a complete understanding of what this case is about, what is the data available inside that, have an understanding. If you want to jump in it, you can quickly clone this out. So this will basically create a new data case available to you with this data set, and then you're just ready to kick off. You start solving for these.
Yeah. Thanks, Madhav. So one question is coming that we are getting from Samuel is, so I'm a project controls engineer interested in data analytics to be applied in my working life. The background in industrial mathematics would be handy for me. Do you think that data science can be a good shift for me?
That's from Samuel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question, Samuel. I think again, you already have a strong quant background in terms of mathematics, right? So absolutely, someone with that background definitely can make over the switch towards data science. Again, I think I'll kind of take some of Rajiv's words here, that data science also doesn't mean that you are just kind of learning something new, but there's also an unlearning required. So today we are working with some of the biggest businesses in India and globally, even in the manufacturing domain. So where we are using a lot of these mathematical processes, statistical quality control processes. So uh, a lot of these people are very good from a process perspective, from a Six Sigma perspective. They have deep learning in terms of how that business goes through from a manufacturing process, which is very, very intensive. But now to kind of develop an aptitude to start thinking, to apply, to get insights of that data, not from a Six Sigma perspective, which is predominantly a process improvement objective, but from an insight perspective, there's some unlearning needed as well. But that unlearning, as you kind of start developing that thought process as to how I can take some of these concepts that I have learned in terms of my standard deviation, my variations happening in the process, and then start leveraging those from an analytical perspective. How can I add a mean to it to understand that not just the distribution of the process, but does that overall distribution, is it following a normal distribution or not? uh, you know that unlearning can really help you speed up that overall journey. and definitely can get you started on that data science path much faster as well. So it would be a combination of some unlearning, making sure that you're open to accept some of the new approaches that will come together in terms of taking your past experience and knowledge, and then how it can be fitted into more of a thought process from a data science perspective to solve the given objective.
Well said, Madhav. I think that we are getting similar questions from all across the board. That answers to those questions as well. Uh, I got one technical question from Rajini, which says that in the use case presented for the stub classification, the review will also need contextual embeddings. However, but she doesn't think that word2vec may not be able to capture that for the review process. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So well said, Rajni. I think definitely every solution and objective has its advantages and some challenges. Now in our objective, we were able to get a lot of good results and the accuracy that we were looking for, leveraging the word2vec algorithm. In a review process where we might have missed those embeddings, we would have tried to again tweak that approach. And again, as I mentioned, right, that a lot of the success that we achieved were for among the top 2 to 3 deciles, but for the rest of it, we took an approach where we were taking a combination of results coming from the neural network as well as different results coming from other classification algorithms, and then we took the approach of applying the highest available probability uh, for the classification, so that our goal is in terms of if we can get the right classification versus what is the algorithm we are using. So from that perspective, in that case, we were able to attain what we were looking for, and as a prototype to sort of get that a solution to a next level. That's where we're trying to focus on the BERT algorithm as well, which should solve for some of those review and embedding aspects also. But a challenge on the BERT perspective is that it requires very high computational power, so it's not always the go-to algorithm, at least when you're kind of starting out with a business perspective, which always has some constraint, be it from a cost or time perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So with this, Madhav, I like to bring this Q&A session to the end, and I'd like to thank you. And I would also like to thank you all the participants who have been there with us. So all our panelists, Rajiv, Satyamoy, Madhav, are available on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, further questions, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to Analyttica's FB page or our Twitter handle, and we will be more than happy to connect with you. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for all of us joining today from different parts of the world and from different time zones. So it's good evening here. I think it's good night somewhere else, and good morning or good afternoon. So thank you all for joining us. The recording of this video will be available on, or this event will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll be posting it later on our Facebook channels, and excerpt from this on the event channel and our Twitter handles. So feel free to go through it, follow us on social media. And as Madhav mentioned, that starting next week, we'll be having, we are kicking off our webinars, and that's our hands-on sessions on different data cases that are available on ATH Leaps platform. There, we will be solving a business question with analytical backend. So how do you use analytics or data science to solve an actual business problem? And we have, starting next week, these sessions, hands-on session will start. So watch out for our emails, our invites in your inbox, and we'll be sending them out. And in the meantime, you can go ahead to the webinar section of the Leaps, register them there, register yourself there, and we'll be reaching out to you. Okay, so with that, I'd like to thank you everyone and wrap this session up. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Satyamoy and Madhav, for taking out time and walking us through some of the very interesting topics ranging from business to AI.
Great. Thank you, Varun. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.